You ever had the desire to run a half marathon or a marathon or an ultra marathon? Well, today I'm going to share with you my experience of running an ultra marathon, a 50K race. As far back as I can remember, I've always enjoyed running, and then I've also always enjoyed pushing myself or trying to accomplish things that I think would be difficult to accomplish. And one of the goals that I had had for most of my life was to run a marathon, and I did that in, I think it was 2006. That was a good experience, but after that experience, I guess it wasn't what I thought that it would be, and because of my beliefs about the impact that running and long distance running has on your body, I felt like that's probably the only marathon that I will ever run. And after that, I was more interested in just running half marathons and 10Ks. But about 3 years ago, I went to a trail fest in the town that I live in, and it was put on, and they had people come from all over the country to run, not really a race, but to run 12 to 13 mile runs in the national parks in the area in which we live. So the Grand Canyon and Zion National Park and Bryce Canyon. And part of that trail fest was they had people coming in and talking about their experiences in running, and then they showed documentary movies about running and ultra running. I just watched that and was so impressed with what those individuals were willing to do and to go through to accomplish their goals. And most of them were talking about running 100-mile races. Now again, I was at the place that I decided a marathon, 26 miles, was long enough for me, and I didn't want to run another one. But I got motivated and excited at that point to run a 100-mile race. Now, do I know what it will be like to run a 100-mile race? No, there's no way that I can know because I haven't done it. But is there a part of my brain that thinks I know what it will be like to run a 100-mile race? Well, the answer to that is yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have that desire or goal to do it. So I have a belief that it will be hard, but there's also a belief that I can do it. I've got this battle kind of going on in my head of I want to do it, but I'm not sure if I can do it, and I'm not really sure what it's going to be like. So part of me says, I don't know if I want to go through that pain of doing a 100-mile race. I don't know if I'm disciplined enough to do the training for a 100-mile race. I don't really know what it will do to my body. But then there's the other belief that says I can do that and it's not going to harm my body and that everything will be okay. So I have these two beliefs going back and forth. Well, I made a decision last year that in preparation to run a 100-mile race, I need to do some intermediate ultra marathons. So my goal was first to do a 50K race, which is about 32 miles. And it's interesting, again, because our thoughts play games, with ourselves in our head. Part of me says that a 50K race running 32 miles is really not that big of a deal, because I've already run a marathon, which is 26 miles. So this is only, 6 miles further than that? There's part of me that says, a 50K race is not that big of a deal. It's only 6 miles more than a marathon, and I ought to do something larger than that. I ought to go for a 50-mile race. But the other part is, well, it's just kind of a logical step. So I'll do a 50K, then I'll do a 50-miler, and then maybe jump to a 100-miler. So I set a goal last year to run a 50K race. I set that in the beginning of the year, and then I started training, and I was feeling pretty good. I was running more regular than I had run for a while. And so then I signed up for a 50K race. So the 50K run at Bryce Canyon. And about 2 weeks after that, I did something to my knee. I think I hyperextended my knee. And as a result, I couldn't run. And I kept waiting for my knee to feel better and to heal, and it didn't. And so I had signed up to run the 50K race, and it was about 4 months from the day that I signed up. So I had felt like I had plenty of time to train for that. But as it turned out, about 3.5 months had passed, and I hadn't been able to run at all. So I just decided, I guess I'm not going to be able to run the race. About 2 weeks before the race, I got the information in the mail, the packet, the shirt, and all of that. And then I started getting emails about the race, and I started getting excited about the race. And I thought, you know, I've never run a trail race before, so I don't know exactly what it's going to be like. And it's interesting, right? I decided to go ahead and run the race, but I had an out. I mean, I knew that I hadn't trained. So in the back of my mind, I had an expectation that I probably wouldn't finish the race, but I was going to just do it to see what it was like. So how often do you play the same games, you know, in your mind, where before we even commit to something, we've got an escape? We're not going to commit until we know that it's safe, that if we don't achieve it, we have a way out, because we're so afraid of failing. That wasn't a conscious thing going on in my mind, but I'm sure there was something going on at a subconscious level. So I made the decision to run the race. The people that I told that I was going to run the race, I even told them the same thing, right? That I haven't really been training. I don't expect to finish the race, but I'm going to just go try it out. So I went and ran the race, and here's what is interesting. My knee, that had been bothering me for 3.5 months and which was preventing me from running, didn't bother me, and I don't know why. And I ran 22 miles before I had to drop out. So I wouldn't have met the time limits to complete the race, but it wasn't my knee that held me back. So I wonder, could have I been training during that 3.5 months or not? I don't really know, and I'll never know for sure, but I do know that I did much better in the race than I thought that I would do. So then I made a decision that, okay, I will run an ultra marathon. I didn't do one last year, and so this year I signed up to do an ultra marathon last month in March, and I signed up for the Antelope Buffalo Run. And I'd been training better this year, but I still had not trained to the level that I felt like I needed to train to run this race. I've run several half marathons over this past year, but as far as my training goes, the longest that I had ever run is 8 miles. And the furthest that I had ever run was the marathon, so 26 miles, and that was over 10 years ago. And then I had attempted to run the 50K race last year. So on the 23rd of March was the 50K race. Here's my experience with that. I ran the race, and just so you know, I completed the race. But here was my experience, and I learned so much from this experience. And I hope some of my experience can help you in accomplishing your desire if you want to run a marathon or an ultra marathon. So again, I've never run that far. So did I know what it would be like to run a 50K race? The truth is, no, I didn't know. But did I have a belief about what it would be like? And again, the truth to that is, yeah. And I believe that it would be hard, but I also had a belief in my mind of what that hard would be like, or how hard it would be. And this race was a loop. So it was a 16-mile loop, and then you just did it again. So for a total of 32 miles. And it had rained. It had been raining the entire week before the race. It had rained quite a bit the day before the race. So in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, it's going to be muddy, it's going to be wet. How is that going to affect the run? Because I've run before in mud, and it's slippery, and I've had things where I've got injured running in the mud. So again, thinking even before the race began, a possible out for the race. Well, I did the first loop of 16 miles. And I had made a decision. So it was cold in the morning and I had a jacket on, and I decided not to take my backpack with me because there were stations about every 5 miles. And I knew that I'd be okay just going to those stations. But my plan was, when I got back to the start line, that I would shed my jacket and I would get my backpack that has my water and the food and stuff that I needed for that. And in the information about the race, it said that the parking lot was near the starting point of the race. And so if you wanted to just drop your stuff off at your car, you could do that instead of leaving it at the drop point. So that was my plan. Well, when I finished the 16 miles, I was beat. And my legs were in so much pain and my feet were in so much pain that when I got to the starting point and I had to go to where my car was, turns out that the parking lot was further away than I thought. It was probably there to the parking lot and back to the starting point of the race. It was a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile. To me, it looked like forever. I was in so much pain that I couldn't even run to my vehicle. So I just walked to my vehicle, and all the way there, guess what was going on in my head? It's like, I really don't know that it's that important to run this 50K race. What's the big deal anyway? And maybe this goal to run a 100-mile race is kind of a stupid goal, and I don't really need to do that. So again, think about that. Oftentimes we make commitments when we're in a comfortable place, but then when we begin to experience the pain or the discomfort of moving towards accomplishing that goal, it becomes more difficult. So for me, I began to doubt my decision to run a 50K race or a 100-mile race. And the thoughts in my head were, you could just get into your car and go home. And there were some other thoughts going on. I had an appointment that was an important appointment with my family later on in the day. And part of me was thinking, I don't know if I'll be able to finish the second loop in time. And that commitment to my family is more important than running this 50K race. So all of the excuses began to come into my head. But I decided not to quit. So I walked to the car. I got my pack, and I walked back to the start point. And on this video, I'm going to just share to this point. And on my next video, I'll share with you what occurred on the second half of my 50K race. And again, my hope is that that will help you in your desire to accomplish a goal that you may have of a race that is real challenging for you, and you don't know if you can accomplish that in your life. I invite you to join me in part 2 of this video of my 50K race. You'll see the link below. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, follow me here.